Hello, welcome back to Aetheral Space 11.23 Star. We are back.
Yes, I'm so excited. Last time we left off, Dragon was being cool, so maybe we're gonna get some sick Dragon lore here. I like that it's just Star, very different than the usual titles we get.
The last one was called Phoenix, to be fair.
No, the last one was called Shadow of Strength.
Oh, right, no, the one before that was called Phoenix, yes.
Yeah. Sorry, my throat's a little phlegmy. The first time you see a certain something, you find it incredible, awe-inspiring. For Dragon Hadrian, that thing had been the sky. In Crestpool, the breather city, all light was artificial, all air recycled. The idea of a sun was a bad joke, the closest thing a pale glow through the clouds. Quite often, Dragon would stand on one of Breather 19's balconies and stare up, trying to see them. He'd read about them in books, seen them in videographs. These things called stars, lights that made themselves. He never saw a thing. For all he knew, these things called stars were pure fiction. For all he knew, the world that he saw was all there was. But still, stars burned all by themselves, perpetual, never needing anyone or depending on anyone. There wasn't a thing in the world that could hurt them. And they shone so bright, like nothing else in the universe. Bright enough to light up the dark. Dragon Hadrian thought that he would quite like to be a star. Dragon fired the pistol again and again as he fell, even as each shot was deflected by a punch from his opponent. At the moment before he would have hit the ground, he momentarily recorded his legs into Gemini World, allowing him to land unharmed. The moment his feet came back into existence, the moment those feet touched the ground, he kicked off, charging towards Caesar and her bodyguard. This mountainous region, far from the battlefield, was rocky and rough. It was all Dragon could do to avoid tripping as he ran. His broken arm flapped uselessly at one side as he fired his pistol with the other. Plasma fired out again and again, some shots being recorded into his Gemini shotgun before being launched, but not one struck Caesar. The commissioner swung her weapon, a massive, bulky rifle, in Dragon's direction, firing a shot the moment it was facing him. An invisible attack, with not even a bullet being visible. With not even a bullet being seen. A single hit would be enough to obliterate him. Gemini shotgun! But if it never hit, there was nothing to worry about, was there? Dragon came to understand the nature of the attack further as he absorbed it again. That weapon must compress air and launch it over huge distances, effectively allowing Caesar to reload using the atmosphere itself. A similar principle to Avaman the announcer's wind-based attacks. But this woman was not the announcer. She wasn't a contender. She wasn't even close. This person was only confident fighting someone who was kilometers away. Even then, they needed a bodyguard to protect them from retaliation. The special officers were the symbol of the supremacy's meritocracy, and the merit that had brought this woman to their head was mere cowardice. It wasn't like Dragon could talk shit about others fighting smart, but these people were supposed to be warriors, weren't they? They were meant to be strong at the very least, strong enough to bulldoze through obstacles. At least Dragon admitted he was just a sneaky asshole, but these people... For some reason, they really pissed him off. Dragon snarled as he leapt over a rock, flipping his pistol over in his hand and swinging the grip at the cloaked woman's head. At the same time, she twisted her body and unleashed a devastating roundhouse kick, smacking the gun out of his grip and smashing into his neck. As he flew down to the floor, Dragon gasped for breath that did not come. Something inside his throat had broken, something important. His windpipe, I assume. He sent it away. Gemini World! It didn't matter. None of these injuries mattered. He could just record them away and fix them later. He could fix anything. Anything that didn't kill him was pretty much nothing. Delirious confidence dragged its claws across his mind. As he landed on the ground, however, Dragon saw something unusual. Purple aether lingering around the spot the woman had struck. He glanced at the aether running around his throat, and in that moment the light intensified. And words flooded into his brain. I don't know how to translate the faces, but this is great. Uh-oh! It looks like you've been affected by Michael Kerberos' ability. Red light, green light. Ah! Because you've been hit by one of Michael's attacks, you'll now need to follow the rules of the ability. Oh! Don't worry, though. The rules are simple. Just keep them in mind and you'll be fine, okay? This is my best translation of the faces. 1. When Michael declares red light, you must stop moving. If you move during red light, part of your body will be skewered by the stake of judgment. 5 seconds after red light, Michael must declare green light. At this time, you can move normally again. Woohoo! Don't worry about getting thrown around. So long as you're not the one initiating the movement, it's all good. Have fun. Dragon blinked as he lay on the ground. What the fuck? Before he could pick himself back up, he heard the raspy voice of that woman, Michael Kerberos. Red light! Shit! Dragon remained on the ground in an undignified heap. No, it came back! Back from Arc 1! Sweat trickling down his forehead, focusing all of his aether on defense. If he couldn't move, he could at least mitigate the damage he was about to take as much as possible. From his face down... This is a cool ability. From his face down position, he couldn't see what Kerberos was doing, but it was a safe bet she'd use this opportunity to attack him. So, why wouldn't she just make it so that he can't move at all, period? I guess the stake of judgment's more powerful with the limitation. Because it doesn't say he dies, he just gets hit with the stake of judgment.
Yeah.
Can he record the stake of judgment, though?
Who knows?
From his face down position... Oh, wait, he's playing Yu-Gi-Oh! He couldn't see when Kerberos was doing. He's in defense mode. He couldn't see what Kerberos was doing, but it was a safe bet she'd use this opportunity to attack him. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. 4 seconds. This is like a fucking Dio montage. The kick slammed into his side like a sledgehammer, forcing air and blood out of Dragon's lungs as he flew through the air, limbs whipped about by the wind. I guess the key would be juggling, right? You hit them in a way where they can't move during their green light time on their own, and then during the red light time you fuck them up again. He landed again a short distance away, directly on his broken arm. A scream of pain lingered at the back of his throat, and it took all that he had to keep it from escaping. 5 seconds. Green light, Kerberos said sullenly. Dragon screamed, his cry of pain echoing across the bleak landscape, even as he picked himself up with trembling legs. In retrospect, he should already have recorded his broken arm, but he was wary of the difference it would make to his balance, not to mention the reduced weight of his body. If he recorded too much, he wouldn't be able to move naturally. No, for the time being, the arm stayed. Dragon whipped his head around, ready to fire off a volley of Gemini's shotgun when he heard it. Red light. He froze. Shit! It had barely been 2 seconds since Kerberos had released red light, and she was already using it again? The rules said that she had to say green light 5 seconds after red light, but they never mentioned a time limit for the reverse. She could just keep stopping his movements again and again, with only the barest interval between uses of her ability. Not good. You were saying I was weak? Caesar called out, stepping out from her cover, pointing her rifle at him. I suppose that makes you strong, then? What's with the comma there? I suppose that makes you strong, then?
I suppose that makes you strong, then, yeah.
I see.
Yeah, no, I was right. you gaslighted me.
Bang! She pulled the trigger. Gemini's shotgun! And again, it didn't hit. It seemed he could at least absorb incoming projectiles without it counting as a movement. Nice. Caesar frowned, her eyes flicking over to Kerberos. He might be able to fire off those shots while he's frozen, too. Don't get careless. Aye, aye. Kerberos grinned, white hair swinging over her eyes. Green light. The instant those words left her lips, Dragon leapt backwards. It was clear now that his approach had been way too rash. He needed to get out of the range of this woman's ability, come up with a new plan of attack, and engage from there. Gemini roared! The first punch struck him in the stomach, sending him heaving forward, and the second slammed upwards into his jaw. Bloody teeth flew out of his mouth as his head was jerked back, the pain of it enough to break his concentration and prevent him from disappearing. Before he could even hit the ground, Kerberos had seized him by the collar and thrown him down onto the rocks below. Straddling his prone form, the woman pulled her fist back once again, aiming right for his face. Dragon raised his good hand to block the attack. Red light. And as he did, he felt a spike of pain surge through him. His raised hand was enough to deflect the punch, but as Dragon looked over to the source of his agony, he saw that he had by no means escaped damage. A huge stake, jet black and of flawless geometry, was impaling the elbow of Dragon's broken arm. Blood oozed out from the sides of the wound, trickling down onto the stone below. Dragon gasped in pain as he looked at the object, at what was surely the stake of judgment that Kerberos' ability had mentioned. Caesar remained where she was, looking down at Dragon dismissively from a distance.
Sorry.
You don't seem to understand what strength is, little boy. It's not about throwing the hardest punch. Little man. You can't use little man, that's his name. It's not about throwing the hardest punch, or using the most powerful ability. It's about competency. Green light, in the split second of movement that Dragon was permitted, he lunged upwards at Kerberos, clawing at her face, but pain and exhaustion made his movements clumsy. She slapped his hand away and planted her own palm against his face, slamming his head back into the dirt. Red light, she grinned. So long as you can get the job done, Caesar smirked, reloading her rifle, the barrel wheezing as it sucked in air. It doesn't matter how you get it done. I've killed many people without ever laying a finger on them. I'm going to kill you without ever laying a finger on you. That is strength. That's what the supremacy's all about, you little shit! Shut up! I already know that! I agree with that! Dragon couldn't speak aloud, but his thoughts were a maelstrom. Even he didn't understand the anger that he was feeling. Nothing that Caesar was saying was new. Nothing that Caesar was saying was a surprise. So why? Green light! Instantly another punch to the face, dazing him in that moment. Ugh! Red light! Oh, this is so fun. No! I love that it's just as I predicted. I love the juggle. As Dragon was forced to stay still once more, Kerberos reached over and tugged at the stake impaling his broken arm. The pain of it, as the object was forced out inch by inch, was beyond anything Dragon could have ever imagined. It took everything he had to stay still. Don't scream, Kerberos pulled. Don't scream, and pulled. Don't scream! And with one final effort, she tore the weapon free from Dragon's elbow. Oh! Don't worry, I'll take this one for you, lad! Sending his entire forearm flying off at the same time. Oh my god! As the limb dissipated into aether, Dragon felt his vision wavering. The borders between sky and ground were becoming indistinct. Something red was flowing out around him. Was all that blood really his? He'd been reckless. He'd fucked up. He'd gotten cocky. He was pissed. He couldn't die here. He couldn't lose in such a stupid way. He wasn't that pathetic. His brain felt like it was melting inside his head. Green light, Dragon moaned. Red light! Another punch smashed into his face, and as Dragon heard a loud crunch, his right eye became a crazy mess of color and light. There was something warm on his cheek. He felt like he was going to be sick. As his head lay back, as he vaguely felt blow after blow pummeling him, finishing him, he could see the sun high above. Its light was filtered and warped by the lotus in the flames, but it was still undeniable. Singular. Something far above all of this. Looks like this is the end for you, huh? Said the archivist, sitting cross-legged inside that star, leafing through his book. Bad move on your part. I'd have advised against it if you asked me, but hey, you didn't ask me, did you? So I guess this is what you wanted. Fuck you, Dragon muttered. I'm getting beaten to death. How could that be something I wanted? Well, maybe you're a masochist, the archivist shrugged. But I guess that wouldn't fit either. You're way too much of a coward. Dragon glared. I just went after the commissioner of the special officers by myself. I might be an idiot, but I'm not a coward, idiot. The archivist laughed, a single harsh bark, and tossed his book away. When he looked back down at Dragon, his entire demeanor had changed. Those mocking, bright eyes had become dark and bitter, and the youthful aura he'd previously exuded had vanished. If anything, he seemed older than Dragon. Do you think physical pain is the only thing cowards fear? Dragon swallowed. I did everything I could. The landscape shifted, shuddered, shattered, and suddenly, all around Dragon Hadrian, was the void of space. An imaginary chill crawled over his bones as he felt the dark press inwards all around him. In that abyss, he could see only three things: himself, the archivist, and a star station hanging resplendent. He knew it. The cradle, the place where they'd first met the Oliphant clan, and the place he'd last met. You did not, the archivist sneered. Whenever you're faced with discomfort, you run away from it. When you met Asmodeus Fix again on the cradle, you distanced yourself from him, didn't you? Why? Dragon blinked. Because I hate him. No, you don't, the archivist spat. You risked everyone's lives to clear his name. Why? Your feelings towards him were complicated, and you're distressed by looking at yourself. You didn't want to put yourself into a position where you had to examine yourself, so you pushed him away with a quick retort and went on your merry way. It's the same with everything else. The world broke and came together once again. This time, they stood atop the ruined heart building back on Kalis Breck, watching as the Dragon Hadrian of the past pointed his gun at the back of a toy Muzazi. Ruth Blaine lay on the floor right beneath the swordsman. Time was frozen, scraps of debris and dust hanging still in the air. Sweat paused mid-trickle down the old Dragon's temple. Back then, the archivist said, all-encompassing, no longer visible. Why did you save Ruth Blaine? I'd gotten to know her, Dragon replied haltingly. I didn't want her to die! Liar! You'd known her for barely a couple of days! And for most of that time, she'd been one of your captors. Yet when the time came, you raised your gun and shot your rescuer in the back! Why? Dragon watched as, in this sluggish world, that blue bolt fired out of the gun and slammed into the space between Musazi's shoulders. The special officer collapsed to the ground, his body spasming wildly. And the Dragon of the past looked on with uncomprehending eyes. He hadn't even realized he'd done anything yet, poor bastard. The archivist took over from his train of thought. You don't know, do you? You took an action without knowing why, and then justified it to yourself retroactively. It's all because you're unwilling to inspect yourself, and that's why you don't understand your anger. It's the truth, the archivist snapped. Do I need to spell it out for you? Why you shot Atoy Musazi? And why the commissioner infuriates you so much? Very well. The world died, and the world came back to life. They were still in the Heart Building, but further down below, and further back in time. Ruth and Dragon were standing in the hallway, the sun trickling in through the wall-length window, the orange sunset illuminating their faces. Ruth was saying something, the promise she'd made back then. They'd just been arguing about the way the world worked, about how everyone deep down was just awful. And then she'd said, I'll show you. The Dragon Hadrian of the past stood with his palm flat on a door, not looking at her. Show me what? That people can be good. That they're not what you think of them. The old Dragon squeezed his eyes shut, gritted his teeth, and barely suppressed rage. For a long time he was silent. And then he'd said, Fine, do what you want. Deep down, the archivist said quietly. You wanted to be proven wrong, didn't you? You wanted the world to be brighter than it was. You wanted the stories people tell about themselves to be true. Undone and redone, again and again, everything he'd seen. The death and destruction, the suffering and unfairness, the world crushed underfoot. There had been bright spots, his friends, the times they'd had, but overall, when he looked back at the day, he knew now that he'd been right. You wanted to be proven wrong, didn't you, Dragon? The archivist said softly, not unkindly. You wanted Ruth Blaine to show you a different world than the one you believed in. Slow tears ran down Dragon's cheeks, and just as slowly he nodded. That's right, he thought. That's why I hate the Commissioner. It's not that I'm surprised. I'm disappointed, because it's just as I expected. You are a person who does not look at yourself, so you couldn't comprehend, the archivist declared. You did not shoot Atoy Musazi for mere sentiment. You did not join Skipper's crew for mere convenience. No sane man would do such things. Dragon shot Atoy Musazi. You acted because deep down inside yourself there is a sliver of belief, a conviction you yourself would not acknowledge, drowned by your pessimism, just waiting for the opportunity to show itself. Dragon shot the thing beyond Atoy Musazi. Say it! The archivist urged. Admit it to yourself! Otherwise, nothing will change! Dragon shot the world, the galaxy, the entire fucking universe. Say it! Skipper had said it again and again and again, hadn't he? His mantra, his soul. I want to change the shape of this world. Dragon snapped, his eye open. Fuck. I want to change it too! Red light! Kerberos' fist came down once more, a finishing blow, and Dragon caught it in mid-air! The instant Dragon moved, a new stake of judgment ran itself through his stomach, but he ignored it. It didn't matter. All that mattered was winning. You're right, he whispered, face bloody and beaten. Caesar, still standing behind cover, raised a hand. Let him speak, that gesture seemed to say. Let him give me the satisfaction. Kerberos obeyed without question. Strength, Dragon went on, wheezing. Power. It's all bullshit, isn't it? Even competence. Even that doesn't really matter. Whichever person's still standing by the end, no matter how it happens, even if they're weak, they're strong. He chuckled a wet, warped chuckle. It's so fucking funny, right? That's how all of this works. It's all chance. It's all just people killing other people for no fucking reason. Blue aether sparked, surged, and shone, the synchronized energy nearly enveloping Dragon. Kerberos still straddling him, squinted from the sudden light. Dragon's remaining eye shone incandescently, like a star pulled down to Earth. Caesar, having clearly realized this wasn't any kind of surrender, called over the rush of screaming aether. Michael, kill him now! Kerberos did not hesitate, in one smooth motion. She whipped her hand into her cloak, pulled out a cleaver-shaped sword, and swung it down towards Dragon's head. The speed and force would be more than enough to slice through his skull. Cling! Ah, Dragon thought. Wild satisfaction coursing through him. Eyes nearly rolled up into the back of his head. Right now, I feel like I could kill anyone. He had caught the blade of the cleaver in his broken teeth, red foam pouring out over his lips as he held on with all his strength. The blade sliced through his cheeks, opening them bloody, but he paid that no mind it didn't matter. With a cold and clear calm, Dragon raised his palm and pointed it directly at Kerberos' face. Her eyes widened in alarm. She clearly knew what was about to happen, but everything was so slow, so slow. It was far too late for them to do anything. They should have just killed him straight away. In the moment Kerberos went to pull away, long and jagged cracks began to spread out from the wounds on Dragon's cheeks, his face disintegrating as he burned his aether. Everything seemed to come so naturally, even as his body fell apart. He needed to keep the air bullet, but he had another projectile to fire. Gemini Railgun! The hand that Kerberos had severed reappeared right in front of her, and then vanished again, and then appeared once more, recorded and manifested, and recorded again and again and again, speed and power increasing each time, all in the span of a second. A shot stronger than anything Dragon had ever mustered before launched forth, and with a payload of bone and nail, flesh and blood, Michael Kerberos' head was utterly vaporized, after blasting through her goddamn skull! The shit continued to fly, passing through the clouds and leaving a hole like a donut in them. Dragon did not watch any further than that. He didn't have the time to. Gemini World! Dragon disappeared and reappeared a second later, free of Kerberos, screaming and snarling as he charged at Caesar with all his remaining limbs. The hole in his stomach had been recorded into aether, and in his hand he held the cleaver sword he just pulled from Kerberos' dead body. He'd stopped burning his aether, but fearsome light still coursed around his body and weapon. For the first time since they'd met, Commissioner Caesar pulled her sword from its scabbard, swinging it at the incoming Dragon, but he entered Gemini World again, becoming a bolt of blue aether. The lightning circled Caesar like a tornado, reappearing only for brief sword strikes that Caesar was able to deflect. Gemini World! Dragon reappeared directly behind Caesar and, still shouting incoherently, unleashed a flurry of frenzied blows. Caesar met each strike with her own sword, the two weapons clanging as they collided again and again and again. Caesar slowly pouring more and more aether into attacks as she overcame Dragon. In terms of swordsmanship, there was no contest. Caesar had spent years honing her blade, and Dragon had done his best to avoid it. There was no way his blade could get through her defenses. As her blade shone with ivory aether, Caesar dealt her coup de grace, a mighty swing that sent Dragon's cleaver flying out of his hands and up into the air. Caesar grinned victoriously, thrust her blade towards Dragon once again, Gemini shotgun, and stopped as a sudden impact slammed into her body. Her blade froze in the air, her eyes widened to their utmost, a low, pained groan poured from her throat. Smoke rose from her back, and Caesar slowly turned her head to look behind her. There, floating in the air, was Dragon's disembodied hand. Steam rose from the palm. Fuck, I want to keep going and give this the best delivery, but my throat and lungs are toast. I'm going to need to popcorn it to you. Oh my god.
The sword slipped out of her grip and clattered to the ground. I needed you to use all your aether for attack, Dragon whispered, his voice hoarse. The moment you knocked my sword away, I recorded the hand that had been holding it. He raised his arm, revealing the border of blue aether that now terminated it, and sent it behind you. So long as it's connected by aether, it can still operate as normal. You... Caesar's face was twisted in anger, but they both knew that it was already over. Her back had been utterly exposed without any aether infused at all, and the herbal had blasted right through. To be frank, it was a miracle she was still standing. I beat you. Dragon grinned a bloody, drunken grin. Guess that means I'm strong, huh? And you're... Bastard! Caesar screamed, charging right at him, fury overcoming biology for just a short time. Her hands were bird-like claws, her eyes blurred in her sockets, spittle flying from her mouth. She lunged at Dragon, and he just stepped out of the way. His hand returning to his arm, he reached up, caught the cleaver as it came back down, and buried it into the back of her skull. There was little ceremony to it. Caesar dropped to the ground like a machine that had been deactivated, blood and brain matter trickling through the gap he'd made in her head. A second later, Dragon fell too, collapsing onto the rocks. His vision began to blur once more, and... No. He couldn't drop out now. He still had things to do. Unconsciousness was not permitted here. Slowly, lying there, he began the process of recording the parts of his body that had been injured, both inside and outside, just to keep him moving for a while longer. By the time he was done, he was a horror, cross-sections of his bones and organs visible through the gaps in his aether. As he picked himself up off the ground, Dragon's head, with the damaged parts of his face sent away, looked more like a skull than anything else. But it was fine. He could record anything. He'd already overcome these kinds of obstacles. As he finally stood up, the green feather on his jacket began to slowly pulse with light. His gaze dull, Dragon looked down at it. "Hey, Dragon!" Skipper's voice came from the feather, distorted and distant. "You good? You free?" "Yeah," Dragon replied. "I'm free."
Oh shit, double entendre.
His voice sounded like that of a corpse, but if Skipper noticed, he didn't comment it. "I need you to do something for me, kiddo," Skipper said. "You up for it?" Dragon did not blink. "Anything," he said.
Sorry if I peeked the mic, by the way.
No worries, you were into it.
I hope you liked that delivery. That took a lot out of my throat and my chest.
Reduced his lifespan.
Yeah, I truly gave my all to that performance. I did actually cry a little bit. This is the second time Aetheral Space made me cry. I can't believe in the span of 2 chapters you made me care about Dragon so much. This is so much characterization and motivation that I'd never seen. But that fucking callback to Arc 1, it all makes sense now. I wish there had been a little bit more foreshadowing, but that was really good, Tan. That was amazing.
I'm glad you liked it.
Did you get the Gemini railgun idea? I think someone had talked about that in the server
I already
before.
had the Gemini railgun idea. That was always in the cards, but someone predicted it.
Yeah, which is awesome. It just shows how good the series is.
Because he always has to graduate from copying the shotgun to his own thing.
Yeah. It's so good. The skipper doesn't even know. Doesn't give a fuck. Dragon's free is like Eren Yeager's free, and Skipper's free is like... Way. Yeah, it's freedom that way. I mean, basically, him looking at the star, like, it's freedom that way. Tell me that's not true. That was awesome. That was emotional. That was like a whole character arc in one chapter. Jesus Christ. I think this would be a 13 out of 10 if there was just a little bit more foreshadowing and theming leading up, but still, Tan, this was amazing.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I'm really proud of you. I think it was awesome.
Thank you.
How do you feel?
I feel very happy with it.
It feels like this was a cathartic chapter for both of us.
Yeah.
That's fucking brilliant. I hope you keep this energy going forward with Dragon.
Dragon goes goblin mode.
This chapter, when this fucking releases, I can't believe this is the chapter I'm ahead now on. I have to wait for people to get here. This chapter is going to be the reason Dragon finally gets real fan art. It's so good. Like Dragon... Oh, you know what?
What?
Hold on. I have to open Royal Road. Is that... I don't know if you planned this.
What?
But in the cover, Dragon, is that a star above him?
Well, the star was... That whole paragraph about the star, that was from Arc 1 as well.
So is that a star above him on the cover?
I don't think there was... I think it actually is a star, but I'll be honest, it wasn't an intentional thing I did.
No, you should have lied to me, because that's amazing. If it's true. Say it was intentional.
Yeah, that was... You spotted it. Well done.
Oh my god, Dragon's come so far with his Aether. To its utmost. I love that, When he pushes himself, I assume he aether burned, yeah?
Yeah, you mentioned he burned his A for the railgun.
You were kind of subtle with it, but it implied his aether burn, like sacrificing his life to aether, allowed his body to keep up with the speed of his mind, and that's how he was able to do railgun.
Exactly, but yeah, that was an attack could only do with an aether burn there.
That was the intention, though, right? How he did it so fast?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm pushing my body to keep up with my cognitant mind. That was so good, dude. Could you imagine if he did that? If he fucking did railgun, shotgun, and railgun with the fucking XL heartbeat shotgun? The Supreme would never
10.
stand a chance. Oh my god, that was so cool! You made me care about Dragon so much. Now he's way up on my favorite characters. You have to keep this momentum going, though, with him. I want to see more of this development in his thought process and his feelings. This was raw, Tan. I feel like this chapter you showed a little bit of your vulnerability as a writer. Like, obviously, you know, Dragon's not a self-insert, you're not the same as him, but, like, I imagine there was some of your thoughts or you channeled some emotions you felt before.
Yeah, you do that with
this.
everything, I would think, but yeah.
Exactly, but I mean, like, I could really feel, like, I think there's a phrase I learned recently, if you allow me to be pretentious for a second, where it's like, to be a good author, you have to be vulnerable, because you have to really put yourself out there, and I really feel like I felt a part of you with this chapter.
You found my soul.
And I think it's interesting, because you're the type of guy that really doesn't reveal a lot about yourself, even with how long we've been friends. Like, I barely know a lot about, like, deeper thoughts, feelings, but I feel like through your writing sometimes, I get to see that. I get to see inner Tanoni. And it's super rewarding.
Well, thank you.
And Dragon also feels like someone who played his cards so close to his chest, so that we finally got to see him bared raw. It was, I don't know. I'll stop nerding out and making you feel uncomfortable. It was just good, okay?
I love it.
Anyway, I don't even think we should have a fun fact this chapter. I don't think that fits the
was
tone.
A fun fact.
Man. I guess fun fact, what was the name of that pale dot on Kalis, or on Crestpool?
Well, he never saw a pale dot.
No, he said there was a pale light through the clouds. What star was that?
That was Crestpool 1.
Damn. What a name.
What else would it be called?
Just wait till you see Crestpool 2, the sequel. If Crestpool's so good, why is there no Crestpool 2?
He's like looking at it like, oh my god, I get it.
Oh, wow. And I like that you addressed that there was no development with Fix. It makes sense now. He was repressing his emotions, his backstory. It retroactively justifies that missing piece in Arc 7, I think. Even though I still would have liked to see a little bit of it.
Well, by
that
no
was
means
good.
that it's over. But,
What?
by no means is that whole arc over, really. But, yeah.
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah, dude. Do you have another one?
I don't. That's the most recent written one.
Oh, I'm itching. I have like a fucking Aether crack addiction. I need it in my veins. Although my throat is I have a feeling by the time we do fucking the podcast with our guest, and by the time I go out tonight, like tomorrow, my voice is toast at work. They're gonna be like, "Why can't you call vendors?" I'll be like, "I can't speak, bro."
You must make
All right.
sacrifices for Aetheral Space.
Fuck. Well, thank you guys for watching, and I guess we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.